week's episode of Durarara Season 2, Ikebukuro proves yet again that it's one of the weirdest little cities I have ever seen. This week's episode was a lot of fun. Anything can happen. Big tall men in briefcases can fight against zombies, then Shizuo shows up smacking them against building sides. There's tons of new characters who are introduced this week, and even a little bit of comedy where Shinra ends up getting captured in one of Celti's weird little shadow bubbles. It's a pretty weird episode, and it pretty much just feels like more Durarara, and I like that. I especially love all of the new characters, in particular, this pair of twins that's actually Izaya's two younger sisters. There's Mairu and Kururi, and they are very strange because they're the perfect example of don't judge a book by its cover, because their actual outside appearance does not reflect their personality whatsoever. You have the character of Mairu, who looks, frankly, gorgeous, bombastic, yet she might be one of the most quietest, most weird, awkward characters seen in the series thus far. She happens to be very mischievous, just like her sister as well. She just doesn't happen to show it. Her sister, on the other hand, is incredibly outspoken. She loves reading, she loves manga, and she's an open bisexual. She tells this to the entire class, and it's a really funny scene, and it just gives us a perfect example of why the characters in this show are so enduring. But what's really great about this episode is how Izaya actually builds them up and saying that, oh, they're gonna be fine, don't worry, if the bullies mess with them, they're gonna mess their shit right back up. And there's a scene where these girls are messing with them by defacing their desks, and they knew that this was all going to happen, and they eventually do trick them, and they get a little help from this other new student by the name of Aoba, who also has a pretty cool confrontation with Mikado, because he's curious about what his affiliation with the dollars is. And little by little, that's something they are going to get into, but what I think I really loved most about this episode, though, is all the stuff with the mystery of these new characters, especially at the very beginning, with that short little battle between that one tall guy and what I'm guessing is Hollywood, which is that person with the weird zombie makeup and all that stuff, because apparently this killer is an expert at using the, Hollywood-style makeup, and it looks really creepy and awesome, but when Shizuo is there, he's just going to tear shit up, and he sends this guy flying across the city, which is really, really great. And I also like that they even follow up on a scene with Henri again, just reminding us that Saika is still within her, and it's actually becoming a lot more vocalized, which is pretty freaking creepy. And then, of course, there's the Shinra scene, where it immediately just pulls to him, and his head is poking out of this shadow bubble, and he's like, so, you're probably wondering how this went down. And then he recalls the entire events where he met Celti, who was feeling really bad about losing all of her money, and he was trying to console her, and even trying to, of course, get with her yet again, because he's completely obsessed with Celti, but she completely denies him and ends up leaving him trapped in this little bubble, and he ends up getting in a little bit of trouble at the very end of this week's episode. But again, Durarara continues to remind me of, like, a Tarantino movie, how it's constantly out of order, how they'll go to the future events and they'll go back to the past, and that's what they were doing in this week's episode, because at the very end, you actually get to see that one guy who was knocked across town by Shizuo in the park bench. He's getting ready to die, he's coughing up blood, and then you have those two twins who actually ended up finding Celti's money. So everything sort of comes full circle in that sense. I love how all of the stories end up tying together, and we're also eventually going to get to see Simon again and get some Russian sushi. I can't wait to see that dude again. That guy is great. But I think one of the more surprising scenes this week is how the two twins actually get back at those bullies, how they sneak this weird little firebomb in their purses, and how they sneak this drugs into their backpacks, so they basically get in trouble and get kicked out of school. And they also become somewhat enamored with the new student of Aoba, and at the very end of the episode, both Mairu and her sister end up kissing him, and it's pretty strange, I gotta say. He's probably feeling pretty good right there, probably on cloud 9. What I will say is, this was another ridiculous, offbeat, bombastic episode of Durarara. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of Durarara Season 2? It was another good episode. It was another episode of Durarara, and I love that they're still keeping the tone and the pace of everything. We even got back to the chat rooms in this week's episode, which was very nostalgic, and just getting to see some small confrontations between some of the characters that we haven't seen too much, like, of course, Kita and Izaya. I just think that's absolutely fantastic. That's something that hardcore fans of Durarara are really going to appreciate, and it amazes me how they're able to create so many different characters, and yet it still never feels too, like, heavy or mixed. Like, the pacing always, I think, has been really good in the series. and I think that's a really hard thing to pull off when you have such a large and elaborate cast, especially some of which are, like, not even human at all, like Celty, who's just an amazing character still, and it really wasn't a focus on her this week. It was really on the new characters, who are the twins, who are just, you know, they're Isaiah's sisters, so they're absolutely insane, and just, I can't wait to see what they're going to do with them. And that scene where her sister freaked out on those bullies and just jumped up doing some martial arts and threatening to pour the tacks in her mouth, that was pretty freaking messed up, but also really well animated. The animation and everything in the series is great, that coupled with the amazing character design. And that is something, again, that I think is really hard to pull off when you have such a massive cast of characters. Every single character looks incredibly distinct and different from one another, and you know exactly who they are when they pop up, and I just think that's fan-freaking-tastic. There's still a lot of mystery to this series, like who Hollywood is. They kind of avoided the whole Hollywood thing, actually, in this episode, and it was mostly just sort of in the background. This was basically an introduction to some of the new characters of Durarara, and I think they are welcome. We could always use some new characters for the series, some fresh new faces. We'll make for some fresh new episodes. So the production value in this one was good, great animation, good artwork, fantastic voice acting and music score as always, little bit of action, little bit of mystery, pretty damn good episode of Durarara if you ask me. You should definitely check it out if you're deciding to follow the second season, or if you considered yourself a fan of the first season, you must check this one out. It is not to be missed. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And before you guys leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Durarara Season 2. Do you have any more theories about who the Hollywood killer could be? What did you think of the new characters who were introduced this week? Do you have any favorite new ones? What do you want to see from the second season of Durarara? Before you guys leave, make sure and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. You can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. It's really easy to do, and that way you can check out all of our brand new anime and manga reviews. We're covering a lot of the hottest shows from the winter 2015 anime season. You guys can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.